The Fox News Decision Desk can now officially project that Donald Trump will become the 47th president of the United States.
Trump will be the next president of the United States of America. Something a lot of people did not expect to happen. There are a lot of different theories of why the Democrats lost.
It was the Dems, their terrible policies, and pushing forward a candidate who had not earned a single vote.
We got beat because the Republicans and conservatives built a different media system that had to do with online, had to do with podcasts, had to do with streaming platforms, and they were spending their money there.
Democrats run for office as if the voters don't live here.
And although I agree with most of them, I thought of a different one. The Democrats thought they were going to win because of the polls, but the results of the polls were influenced by bots.
Why we missed the mark in this election. And from my vantage point, I think that over-reliance on consultants and pollsters who really, from my opinion, don't have the pulse of the people at hand.
And that's why they never changed their campaign plan. The polls were wrong, just like in 2016.
Then we must accept this result and then look to the future. Donald Trump is going to be our president. We owe him an open mind and the chance to lead.
At first I thought that the use of bots might have been the reason for the polls to be inaccurate, so I tried finding evidence to support my claim. But I couldn't find anything decisive. There were some bot accounts on social media, but nothing connected to the polls. The only evidence I found was that polls became less accurate because of the internet. In short, they used to conduct polls by going from door to door or through phone calls.
Grabbed by the pussy.
But nowadays, a lot of polling companies use internet polls because it's more cost efficient. However, internet polls most of the time rely on self-selected participants.
All these precautions are things online polls don't do. Their samples consist of just the website's readership, which could skew to one area, one age group, one political bias, or people who won't even vote. News organizations love to say our online poll shows, but their online poll isn't a representative sample and doesn't actually show anything except what the people who come to their website might think.
Meaning that the poll might not represent the broader population. Older people or people without internet access might be unrepresented. And although today less people answer door-to-door or phone polls, they still reach a more diverse group than internet polls. So, in short, my theory was wrong, or at least I couldn't prove it. There's no evidence that bots influence the polls. The only evidence there is that the internet made polls less accurate. But during my research, I did find something else. I noticed some similarities between this election and the election of 1980 between Ronald Reagan and Jimmy Carter.
Here's in New York, here again is Walter Cronkite.
Ronald Reagan appears to be heading toward a landslide electoral victory tonight across the United States and all sections of the country. And now another deep blow for Jimmy Carter in his native South. The CBS News can estimate that Alabama will fall to Ronald Reagan, as well as Florida, which already has gone to him, a major state there.
Ronald Reagan won the election with a landslide, while the polls said it would be close. Just like Trump, Reagan's campaign focused heavily on the economy.
I mean, it's how do you balance the budget?
Well, balancing the budget is like protecting
You don't spend more than you take in, right?
Yeah, it's like protecting your virtue. You have to learn to say no.
At that time, the United States was experiencing economic challenges like a high inflation and a high unemployment rate. During his campaign, Reagan was very critical on the Soviet Union and the president's handling of the Cold War.
America has never gotten in a war because we were too strong. We can get into a war by letting events get out of hand as they have in the last 3.5 years under the foreign policies of this administration of Mr. Carter's until we're faced each time with a crisis.
But that wasn't why he won the election. It was because what Jimmy Carter did, or rather didn't do.
I did criticize the president because of our undercutting of what was a stalwart ally, the Shah of Iran. And I am not at all convinced that he was that far out of line with his people, or that they wanted that to happen.
The declining economy was already bad for Carter's reputation, but the Iran hostage crisis, in which 52 Americans were held captive for 444 days, was the final nail in his coffin.
The special report that we planned to bring you tonight was about domestic politics, the battle among the Democrats. But we think the crisis in Iran is more urgent right now than the campaign here at home.
The public saw Jimmy Carter as weak and even incapable of being the leader of the United States.
Could you tell us how the tide is being turned in the case of the American hostages in Tehran?
Well, we haven't made adequate progress there. What we've done since the very beginning.
Reagan, however, showed confidence and determination.
The country has the right to know, do you have a policy for dealing with terrorism wherever it might happen? And what have we learned from this experience in Iran that might cause us to do things differently if this or something similar should happen again?
Well, Barbara, you've asked that question twice. I think you ought to have at least one answer to it. I have been accused lately of having a secret plan with regard to the hostages. Now, this comes from an answer that I've made at least 50 times during this campaign to the press, which is that the question would be, have you any ideas of what you would do if you were there? And I said, well, yes. And I think that anyone that's seeking this position...
And that's how Reagan won. He focused on the economy and on the things his opponents didn't do. So what was Kamala's hostage crisis? Well,
I heard you might have needed to cancel on us to get Kamala Harris on.
But she had an opportunity to come here when she was in Texas, and I literally gave them an open invitation. I said, anytime. I said, if she's done at 10 o'clock, we'll come back here at 10 o'clock. I go, I'll do it at 9 in the morning, I'll do it at 10 p.m., I'll do it at midnight.
You're asking her, you're offering her the opportunity to do exactly what the other candidate did, right?
Why did this moment win Trump his election? Because Kamala Harris refused to appear on any unscripted interview or podcast.
The backlash was some of our progressive staff that didn't want her to be on it and how there would be backlash. I guess there's truth in there somewhere, gentlemen. Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's malpractice, right? You're worried about your staff's feelings and not, getting in front of tens of millions of voters, more than watch the evening news even. And look, Rogan is a symptom of a larger cause, right? I don't think doing Rogan would suddenly win her the election, but it spoke to a mindset of playing it safe, of keeping her from a lot of interviews for most of the campaign, of not taking risks, of not saying, hey, let's figure out 3 things where we can separate ourselves from the historically unpopular president in our party.
And to many undecided voters, this mattered.
Mainly the Joe Rogan podcast because, you have the interviewer asking like unbiased questions, real questions that are coming from viewers, and they answer it genuinely heart to heart.
By not appearing on any unscripted show, Kamala appeared weak and insincere, just as Jimmy Carter once did. The Trump campaign primarily focused on the economy and the fact that the cost of living has increased so much.
I'm announcing today a new step that I'll take to get emergency price relief to all Americans. On day 1, I will sign an executive order directing every federal agency to immediately remove every single burdensome regulation driving up the cost of goods. They drive up the cost of goods.
And he asked the same question Reagan asked decades ago.
That decision, it might be well if you would ask yourself, are you better off than you were 4 years ago?
And I'd like to begin by asking a very simple question. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?
While Kamala was primarily focused on Trump.
I do believe that Donald Trump is unstable, increasingly unstable, and unfit to serve.
The Democrats lacked concrete policies.
And the closing message of the Democratic Party was democracy and Donald Trump is a bad man.
And most of the time, she was just yapping away.
And also, what else are you going to do to fix this problem with inflation?
All right, thank you. Well, let's start with this. Prices have gone up, and families and individuals are dealing with the realities of that bread costs more, that gas costs more. And we have to understand what that means. That's about the cost of living going up. That's about having to stress and stretch limited resources. That's about a source of stress for families that is not only economic, but is on a daily level, something that is a heavy weight to carry. So it is something that we take very seriously.
In a few years, the only thing people will remember from Kamala Harris will probably be moments like this.
My mother she would give us a hard time sometimes, and she would say to us, I don't know what's wrong with you young people. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you.
In the end, I think it's funny that history in some way seems to repeat itself. I'm just happy we won't be seeing any more of this.
I love Venn diagrams. I really do. I love Venn diagrams. It's just something about those three circles and the analysis about where there is the intersection, right? Yeah, I see people that you agree with me, right? So, okay, so I asked my team, I brought products.